Hi, everyone. It's Thursday, April 11th, 2024. Welcome to TechTO Quick Takes. I'm your host, Alex Reilly, and here's what's making news. Hot air or the real deal? We weigh in on the federal government's recent contribution to AI, transforming the end-of-life industry. This company just raised $4 million to support this. We'll go into what that means. And we recently spoke about companies going private on the TSX. Are we seeing more of this? And to help answer these questions, Alex Norman is here. Hi, Alex.
Hey, how's it going?
It's good. How are you?
Pretty good.
Good. Interested, especially for the first headline, to get your take, because I know there's a lot of mixed reviews about kind of what this means for tech in general, just with the federal government's latest contribution. So more on this hot air or the real deal situation. They recently announced a $2.4 billion AI package. So, I mean, interesting to get your take on what you think this actually might mean. So what were the details of this package, and maybe just a little bit more on what the news is?
So a bit of context setting here before I get into the details and our perspective. First of all the details haven't been, the details haven't come out. And I think this is our perspective more on what we've seen historically about the government tries to support the tech ecosystem. They do a few things right, they do a few things incorrect. And the assumption here, so like, look, there's a lot of stuff you can do from like a tax perspective, a regulatory perspective that are just rules based that could have good impact. Then we do a lot of stuff where we subsidize the sector. And I think before getting into details, the perspective that we've seen historically is the government wants to help, but it's worried that it's going to have a lot of losses or a lot of fraud or look bad. And so it's created a culture which they make these announcements and the details come out and it doesn't really move the needle. So that's that. So this is based on historical past programs we're saying. So let's talk about the package and we can talk about what we think is going on here.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's a 2.4 billion is a headline number. That's supposed to be funded over 5 years. So we're talking about 500 million a year, a lot of money. 2.4 billion a year or 500 million over 5 years. It's still a lot of money. Now, the first part, the biggest chunk of this is going, what we can tell is going to provide compute power, access to compute power to AI researchers, institutions, startups, and companies. This will be done via something they're calling the AI Compute Access Fund. What's interesting, this seems to benefit, this is who produces AI compute power. It's foreign tech companies. So we can get into that a bit later. Then the other 400 million is split between several programs. And the idea is here we're going to help AI startups commercialize, boost the AI adoption across the economy in specific sectors, and particularly help SMBs get at AI enable. So 200 million will be distributed via regional development agencies, 100 million via the NRC's IRAP program, 50 million to help workers who basically are challenged by jobs to AI. So I guess it sounds like it's for training. 50 million for the creation of Canadian AI Safety Institute to assess the risk of nefarious AI systems. The development of an AI sovereign compute strategy to develop Canadian AI capacity and infrastructure. So, if you, I don't know if it makes sense. Should we, like the details aren't there. Well, should we, before going to winners and losers and what we think, maybe we should try to go through each of these and my initial take on it. Would that help?
Yeah. So I was going to say, I know you said that there weren't that many details. So I was going to just say, like, how might this be implemented? So why don't we just go through more on, I guess like the package as a whole.
So the first the 2 billion to me, again, this is me armchair quarterbacking without all the details, and I might change my opinion. Maybe I'm a cynic. Like, this sounds like, hey, we're going to provide 2 billion for you to pay to access compute. So chips or cloud computing.
Yep.
We're going to help AI researchers, institutions, startups, and companies, wide range. So I don't know who to provide access, and it sounds like they're providing finance for this. So my guess is most of these people don't have problems with financing. It's actually getting access. In the current market, there's not enough chips on the market. They can't be built fast enough. So this looks like, hey, we've got an over-demand market with a lack of supply. We're going to provide 2 billion. And I don't know, maybe you finance it and it helps make it more easy or cheaper for startups or for, research institutions or companies to pay for AI compute. But this really just sounds like a $2 billion gift to NVIDIA and Amazon and Google. So I think this is a marginal aid to the ecosystem. Now, maybe I'll come out wrong. Maybe saying, hey, we'll give you free, they have to manufacture in Canada, but like, like to me, it doesn't move the needle.
Right.
200 million from regional development agencies and 100 million from IRAP. So this is typical. This is what I call, this goes in the consultant world. This goes, show us what your ROI is going to be. This comes with a bunch of, this is, again, we've talked about if we love or hate shred, and we come in somewhere in the middle, probably slightly negative, but at least that's backwards looking, and firms can usually can learn how to do without consultants.
Right.
These look like consultants. Let's predict that there's going to be winners. You're not going to screw with the money. It gives you no flexibility. That doesn't help startups. It helps startups at the margins, but it doesn't help us be more innovative, be faster, and do the stuff startups have to do. So nice to have more money available to hypothetically startups. 20% of that will go to 10 to 20% will go to consultants. So you go 300 million goes to 240. 240 divided by 5 years. That's it's about 50 million a year, which is like a significant fund per year. But IRAP, you need to spend a ton. You have a customer. I don't know what the regional development, like it doesn't let startups act like startups. So I don't really think it pushes innovation. Okay. I'll never complain about retraining AI people that are impacted by AI. I think that's genius. I actually would like to see more to help retrain people. You need to keep people employed. People, even if you had, people want to feel like they can be successful and have a good career. And when they're threatened by tech, it sucks. And I think if that's done right, that's probably the thing that gets me most excited. Canadian AI, I guess that should be coming out of our defense budget, so that doesn't bug me. So again, I look at this and go, nice. Maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised and they'll actually be allocated. But from what we've seen in the past, usually lots of these either have a lot of planning. You have to know, here's what the ROI is going to be. Here's the risk I'm taking. It's like 3 months. It takes you like 2 to 3 months to get the money. And by then, if you're a startup, everything could have written is useless. And lots of times you have to be like, hey, the research, your startup, you have to be working with a research institution and a large company. Well, partnering with like a big institution and research, they work at different speeds than startups. So this is really to push AI innovation. It just doesn't, shows they don't understand how innovation happens.
Okay. So again, few points from that. More of a benefit for those larger companies versus not really helping like the smaller tech startup again, like what we're trying to do within our community, which is like support those people in their startups that are trying to build. So not as beneficial for them, but also good to know that there is a portion of that package going towards, as you said, ensuring that, the job loss is obviously, there's not fear around that. There's going to be more, I guess, designation towards helping those people find jobs and opportunities through, I guess, artificial intelligence, because there's the fear there. And hopefully more details announced, because I know the federal budget is going to be announced on the 16th of April. So potentially more details around that.
Hopefully we're recording something on the 18th and I'm saying I was completely wrong, eating crow. I think this just shows, and this is not just the current federal government, but like to me, like the winners from here are consultants. Okay. Big US tech that's going to have more demand for chips.
Right.
And hopefully the Liberal Party is hoping that by making this announcement, they look cool to the public and get benefit in the polling. Like this is my cynical view. This is my cynical view. Like, again, you haven't asked me what I would like to see. I think generally the problem with our approach to innovation is we try to make it all inclusive with different multiple levels. Hey, research, you get a university, get a big corporation, get a startup all working together.
Yep.
And we try to pick winners in technology or research, so we think we can pick the winners and avoid the losers. I think the best system out there is a bunch of policies that encourage investment, that encourage risk taking, that help people that get not negatively affected to get retrained and be in the economy and not have, from the changes to be out there. So, and usually what you get is these big announcements coupled with like, hey, we may now increase capital gains, or if you make too much money off investments or whatever, or by taking so they're disincentivizing people to take action, and they're trying to pick winners. Like maybe AI ends up being a 2 to 3 year phase, and bad and there's something bigger around the table that someone could be working on right now, like create the right tax incentives, create the right regulation, give people freedom to operate and fail fast and get back in there, and then get the people that would resist change incentive to change, right? Say, hey, if your company's going to have to lay off a bunch of people because you're adopting AI, again, maybe this could always be warped, but like, if we're going to have a retrain, we're going to have we'll give you a project to retrain people and retain them from, to better take advantage of AI or something like that, get more productivity. But saying, hey, you need compute power, and it assumes that they know that the problem with all our AI ecosystem is that they don't. What we need is $2 billion more access to compute power, and I think it might be true now. Even if they're right, it might be a temporary problem.
Right.
And I feel like I'm ranting. Excuse me.
No. This is great. I feel like I kind of wanted to dig into more of, again, like clearly who the fair winners were, or the clear winners in this deal. And also, yeah, I hope that we're talking about this next week and you're like, oh, well, it seems to be more optimistic than what I maybe initially thought. Just around, like, obviously there's some skepticism because I know we have, like you said, we've seen things like this happen before. Obviously, this is hoping that there'll be a boost in the polls. It's all maybe have underlying mixed messages around what this actually means. But do you have any takes on maybe just the skepticism further that you just have around something like this? Because as you said, the $1 billion is a great headline, right? So
yeah, so I think what we've seen with other programs announced, they either don't get implemented,
yep,
or when they get implemented, it creates it's a lot of paperwork, which seems to create more economic activity and bureaucracy and consultants that benefit from it than actually pushing innovation. I think it also has the predisposition that we know where innovation is coming from. So I think, maybe you go to more traditional Canada, they say this is genius, is what we need. I think from the startup land and innovators, they're like, okay, great, there's $2 billion more I have to pay back in taxes. Right? Like,
yeah,
so I think, like I can think of 100 ways we could push innovation. Like, again, I don't know if this would fly either, but let's create a framework for all levels of government to source Canadian technology versus be a customer. Here's a policy where you can pitch Canada. Here's the 20 biggest problems the federal government wants to solve using AI. Again, the problem with any new technology, first thing, it's used for automation, and government doesn't want to say they're going to shrink their workforce. But could you imagine they said, hey, we think the government has these 5 big problems, and we're willing to spend $200 million over the next $2 billion over the next 4 years to solve them, and we're inviting pitches from startups, and if you're Canadian, you get a 50% bonus on the ability to win it, right? So, like, and again, they're going to be, and it has to be, and you can put all sorts of ways to make sure it's not corrupt, but like AI to better audit income tax returns to make sure that we're not losing out, or and spend less time with it and collect more. And we'll spend $100 million in that, or $100 million a year to speed up zoning approval. We'll provide it to all the municipalities. There's a housing problem. Part of it's the reviews against the local code. We want an AI system that we can subsidize and put into all municipalities to speed up the approval of house renovations.
right.
That at least says, hey, here's a clear problem. We're willing to subsidize it or pay for it and solve it, and we're going to give first dibs to Canadian companies. Now you've got your first customers doing 50. Maybe they say, okay, we're going to give 10 different companies this opportunity for this. They got $10 million. They can go raise off that. They can build something. There's just like, or they just put like better regulations, like, hey, if you do a startup and it fails, you get this tax benefit. Or if you work at we'll get more EI for your employees. Like, de-risk it. Don't pick the winners. Either I'd much rather see this $2 billion going to be invested in solving problems and using local tech companies.
Right. And it'll be interesting, as you said, to see like what's the repercussions of this for the rest of us as well. I know we spent a ton of time talking about this. Just any, I guess, final takeaways, or maybe anything you're hopeful about before we.
If your startup, the startup that was at $200 million going through IRAP and the other areas, if you know how to get IRAP and you qualify, you might as well take it as long as it doesn't take you off building a successful startup. So that is money that's probably the easiest money. It will be the easiest money to get, in my opinion.
Right. Awesome. Great takeaway. Just to keep things moving along again, tech, it's amazing, continues to amaze me. Now kind of making a huge impact on the end of life industry and the funeral industry. This has like a cool TechTO connection as well, obviously, and a connection with Jason too. But news out of Irene, they recently raised 4.1 million. Just maybe touch on what the news is and also explain what Irene does. I know I hinted at it just for those listening.
So it's an industry. So first the news, they've raised 4.1 million from Relay Ventures, participation from EDC and St. Elizabeth Healthcare. They work in an industry we rarely talk about, DeathTech.
Yep.
Irene basically has built a digital first cremation service that modernizes the experience and cuts the cost of cremation in half.
Right. Again, it's something that all of us have to deal with at one point in time in life. It's inevitable, obviously. So just very cool what they're doing.
Well, like hypothetically, all of us die. But there's a lot of people working on lifespan, and there's a lot of people working on digitizing your brain. So maybe we won't all die, but as of today, we all die.
As of now, we do, unless there's something else that comes about, right?
This is like the reason they could raise is for classical reasons, and it's a non-classical tech industry.
Okay, yeah.
It has team, traction, market size. So team, co-founder Mallory Green was the head of corporation social responsibility at Wealthsimple. So great company. Her co-founder Faisal is the CTO. Worked at Zoom AI, which had an exit. Worked at League, which is a large organization, which is one of the bigger training code academies. So credible backgrounds. Traction, the company is live in 5 Canadian provinces, and revenues are supposedly growing fast. And the market size, if you look, quick Google search said, hey, it's a $3 billion. There's $3 billion plus spent on cremation in the US a year, and it's growing fast. Environmental reasons, for affordability reasons. So this looks like big market, some validation with traction, strong team.
Yeah, and we actually had Mallory come and speak at a recent event, and she shared just kind of how she got into this business because there's a family connection with what her parents did. Very interesting. I'll link the I guess presentation that she did here too. I know we shared it the other day, but just link it again. Very cool. She goes into a lot more detail than we have time to do. So I guess might be obvious. I mean, why most companies raise, obviously for growth and expansion. Why did Irene raise, and also why is this notable? Why are we talking about this today?
Well, raise, like you said, expansion, particularly going to States. They said they're going to go to Florida.
Yep.
Like I said, we never talk about DeathTech.
We don't talk about it. Yeah.
I don't remember reading another funding. Maybe Willful, who does wills.
Yep.
But this is an industry which we don't see money raises, and it's like, I'll even 10 years ago, I looked at starting something to help modernize traditional funeral homes. And I think there's a lot of people in tech saying, hey, there's got to be an opportunity here, but very little gets financed because it's been a hard industry to crack.
Because it's been the same, right? Just for ever.
Yeah, and the reason it's been slow adopter of tech. And, look, the customers, either you're preparing for your death yourself, and that means you're probably at, don't think about it till you're 60, 70, 80. Yeah. Or it's the kid, the adult kids of those people that are under stress and don't think about it and will just do with whatever they need. So it's not one where the customers are necessarily looking for tech or thinking about it. They don't really think about it ahead of time.
People don't want to either. It's just, we don't want to think about that.
And the customers of your customers are non-repeat customers. So, it's incentives, so your customer base is not being forced to adopt technology by their customer base, and they're not repeat customers. So there's not much incentive for them to change. It's interesting. Irene's vertically integrated and using tech-enabled to, it looks like they may have cracked the code here and they could become a leader. I know lots of this industry from funeral homes and cremation has been aggregator rolled up by private equity, which are probably finding other efficiencies through scale and stuff like that. It'll be interesting to see if any of them take a cue from Irene and start adopting more technology.
Yeah.
then as a founder, this is a reminder: not only do you need a strong tech solution, but the right business model and go-to-market package to succeed. Like I think if Irene had been trying to sell this to, maybe they do in the future sell this to other cremation companies, they probably would have had no adoption. But by paving the way, they've now validated, and they have to do a more intense solution.
Yeah.
But it seems to have succeeded where others have failed.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if we also start talking more about DeathTech, as you said, because we really don't talk about it at all. And it's not really an industry that's gonna suffer. I mean, personally, I don't think we all are gonna have to deal with this at one point in time or another, as sad as it is to think about. But yeah, Irene definitely has forged a bit of a path in this, like, I guess, sector of the industry. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens there. Just last headline, I know we talked about this last week in last week's episode about one company going private on the TSX and how maybe more privatization of TSX listed tech startups is something we're starting to see. So just we'll start with what the news is there.
So, like you said, we talked about this quite a bit last week.
Yep.
And it's throughout the year. Last week we talked about True Context Corp privatization, which happened earlier in March.
Yep.
This week, in the last, I think, week, 10 days, you've had another one announced, and then someone else, the founder, hit that one. Announced ones, both actually interesting, Montreal-based. I don't know what was in the water in Montreal. Nuvei, who's actually, I think, on the TSX. Nuvei, we'll get into that a bit more detail. Agreed to be privatized by Event International for $6.3 billion USD. So nice size. Lightspeed founder Dax Sylvia, who recently returned as CEO, publicly discussed the possibility of taking the company private in an interview with La Presse.
So you just mentioned, Nuvei specifically, you kind of singled them out. So I guess why would they be specifically important related to this news?
Well, I think we've had 8 or 9 in the last 12 months go private previous to these. Of all the TSX venture ones, this is the biggest deal by far. At least in the last 12 months. It's also dual listed in the NASDAQ. So it's not like, hey, this is a Canadian issue. They're publicly traded in both Canada states. The larger size and dual listing most likely means that it had more analyst coverage and more institutional investors than the other companies that went private. Like the bigger, you're not going to get Goldman Sachs doing an analyst report or anyone doing an analyst report if you're 300 market cap. You're not going to get institutional investors buying you if you're 300 million market cap, because they can't own enough without moving the shares. So this is a company that should have had enough liquidity to be more broad-based support, and hypothetically more broad-based support should more find the right clearing price. But this and this may be reflected that the market was a bit more informed. Like this may be reflected. This got a 56% premium over the previous day's price. So maybe Advent felt that they had to offer a big premium because there's probably more institutional investors. Like previous announced privatizations, current management and current private equity investors, so not like hedge funds, but are rolling over their holdings. So there's like 2 private equity firms, and CEO I think owned over 50% of the company. So they can make sure this transaction happens. They wanted I don't know if they wanted to hold all their shares, but to make this deal, they had to sell some of the shares of Advent, but they're still keeping the majority of the shares. So that means, hey, they still believe in the future upside of this company over the currently publicly traded price and the price they're getting paid from Advent. Right. So once again, we're seeing the public markets either don't value the company correctly, or the management team doesn't feel they can make the investments to succeed in the long run without which will make the company more valuable in the long run without really damaging the current market cap. So it seems like efficiencies in the market again, and a much bigger scale opportunity here.
Right. So you did mention kind of the 2 off the top. So I want to talk about Lightspeed now. I mean, they did lay off a significant amount of staff. I believe it was last week they made that announcement, but I guess they've only discussed going private. Obviously, nothing has been formally announced, but what have they done since being in discussions about going private, aside from the layoffs?
So like the layoffs, they cut 10% of staff, 280 people. They said they're launching some cost-cutting initiatives. The goal of the company is to get to adjusted EBITDA break even, so that right now losing money. I think this and the press announcement are an attempt to paint a picture of the future of the company, how it can grow well and be a profitable company, get investors excited and push the share price back up. Obviously, I think in the context, if you're saying that you're considering going private, they're looking at strategic. I think they also announced that they're looking at strategic alternatives. That's a nice way for saying the board or management team has hired an investment banker to look at how can we increase the share price and get the best return for investors. So they're probably talking to private equity players. They're probably talking to strategic investors. They may have gotten some early feedback saying, "Hey, you're losing too much money." So I think they're positioning the company to optimize the share value and they're announcing it, they're telegraphing it, and they're currently looking at what, do we have to do a share buyback? Do we sell ourselves? We go private? So I think the board and the company is now looking at all alternatives.
Okay. And just last question for you. I want to just do kind of all encompassing. What does this all mean? But just in relation to public and private markets.
The public and private markets continue to value companies differently. The private markets have become more picky. They're still willing to invest in future growth, as if the investment they believe in the long run will create a more valuable company. And that basically says, hey, you can be negative cash flow if it's going to increase your ultimate. Like, ideally, if you're rational, and again, not saying all market participants are rational, the private market saying we're willing to, bear some losses and put the investments in to get to a better place where there'll be more future cash flow that will make this company more valuable. The public companies have done well for tech, but I think they've now said there's with the balance between growth at all costs or cash flow, we want to see some growth, and it has to be cash flow positive. There's a lot less. People are more skeptical. The best way to put it is, public market seems to be much more skeptical of future profitability. They need the proof in the pudding. They want you to show what it means. So, what does it mean? I'm not sure, because I think the IPO window's open. I think that so the IPO window, but it seems to be more selective. You're gonna have to show your near cash flow positive, be cash flow quickly after you list that. It's interesting. I saw a quote last night from one of the Code2 partners saying to go public now, you need a 10 billion market cap and $1 billion revenue. In 2020, the target was 100 million. I hope you don't need $1 billion revenue, because that's quite daunting for lots of companies.
Yeah.
And so I think what's interesting is, I think we're going to start seeing markets a lot more companies go public, especially in the US. But I think you also see a lot of companies that need to invest for a next act to be the tires to be kicking. They might potentially go private. For a founder, I guess, it means the later stage you get, the more you have to think of like a public company, and there's going to be a lot of pressure to get to those numbers and show cash flow sooner than you historically have, or you have over the last decade.
Right. Okay. Covered a lot today, and kind of a wide range in, I guess, like topical information that we shared today. Before we go, just as usual, a couple of announcements around our events coming up. We are in Montreal next week on Tuesday, the 16th. Really excited to bring the community together there. So our Montreal network, if you know anyone, you want to bring friends, all of our tickets are on social media. Please come out. We're excited to host you. TechTO Together, April 24th at Rotman. Again, excited to have the Together series back at Rotman again. Travel is back on May 9th. Very excited for that. And then we have TechTO Sales in partnership with Relay Financial on May 13th. And TechTO Talent, May 15th, virtual event. Can join from all across Canada. We usually see 500-600 people join that one. That's great. And then our big one is the Summer Social on June 17th. So to kick off Collision Week. And that one always sells out. So make sure you get your tickets. Anything from your end, Alex?
Go to Montreal, spend time with the team if you're there. It's going to be fun. Always is. To make sure you show up to our one in Toronto, because it's going to be, I think, a couple interesting conversations.
Oh yeah, lots happening in Toronto. So if you can't make one, there's a million others you can attend this year, which is exciting. Alex, thank you again for joining, breaking it down, explaining it so we can all get some takeaways from it.
It's and hopefully I will not be talking about a go private next conversation. and
Yeah, and
maybe
hopefully
we'll be surprised.
Yep.
Good news.
Hopefully we're surprised by the AI package and there's more details revealed on I guess the 16th or next week whenever we hear about it. So yeah, hopefully we're pleasantly surprised. But again, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. And we'll be back with more updates in a couple of weeks with a new episode of TechTO Quick Takes. And until then, we'll see you on the inside.
We're in the business of delivering impossible things. We're in the business of delivering things that nobody's ever seen before.
If you build that culture, you'll come up with really cool and innovative stuff, and literally could be in the next multi-billion-dollar idea.
So this conversation is largely going to be about scaling yourself and scaling your leadership team.
I want to talk about one of the biggest struggles that I think a lot of startups face early on, which is building initial traction.